Hi, welcome to this week's blog. This week I want to talk to you about our Q&A section on the website. The Q&A section can be found if you just hover over the online course tab, and it will just drop down a Q&A. So if you just click on there, it takes you straight onto the Q&A section. The Q&A section is a fab source of information all about cake, and it really is good to use. So definitely go and have a look at it. On there, you can add your own question or you can answer questions. It's free to use, and if you use it, you get points. And the more points that you get, we just have a look and we can monitor how many people are answering and getting good points. And what we do is we give little presents and thank yous back by offering free membership to our tutorials. So what I want to do is just have a little chat about just some of the questions that have been asked on there and some of the answers that have been given, just to sort of let you see what it's all about. On there. So the first one that comes to mind first is the ganache, and we get quite a lot of questions on there. Now, at one point to add on there just about the question is if it's the first time you've been on it, we have got a little search tab at the top. If you just type in the question you want to ask, just in case it's already been put in front of the audience already, and it saves having to repeat the same question on there. Okay, so you just type in the question. If it's not been asked, then you can go ahead and ask, no problem at all. So ganache is one of the top things, just because that's one of obviously the main products that we use on the tutorials. Now, a lot of the questions on here are fab, and it's even some of the information stuff that I don't even know about, so that's what's really good, and it really brings the whole community alive and just makes it really quite exciting. So one of the questions that's been asked recently was how to make ganache sweeter, which is a good question, and there's been many answers on there. Now, if you want to make a cake, I use a dark chocolate ganache quite a lot. Now, the dark chocolate ganache, the reason why we use it is because it gives it that structure and strength, and also it sets very fast, which is obviously a benefit when you're doing lots of cakes. But if you want to get a little bit extra sweetness to the cake from the ganache, what you could do is add milk chocolate to it, so like a 50-50. So you've got the strength of the dark chocolate, but you've got the sweetness of the milk chocolate. And it also reduces the cocoa content, so it does take a little bit longer to set, but it does just give it that extra sweetness, and that's what I would do if I was looking for a slightly sweeter ganache. But alternatively, Buster89 has posted a recipe on there for a butter ganache. So it's using chocolate, butter and golden syrup to make ganache, which I've never made before, but it sounds nice. So maybe have a little shot of making that. If I've got time, I might maybe have a little trial tutorial and make the ganache up, and we can do a little test online just to see how that works. But it sounds very tasty, and it definitely has more of a sweetness. We had another answer from who was it? Ozgirl42, and she suggested using icing sugar. So popping some icing sugar into the ganache apparently just dissolves, and it gives it that sort of sweetness as well, which is a great idea. It sounds all good. So these are all really good questions and answers on there. Moving on from that, we have the chocolate, and someone just asking where they can buy the Belcolade chocolate that I use. If you go onto Puratus website, that's who actually make the chocolate, and I'm sure they could help you find out where about in the country you can buy the Belcolade chocolate. Alternatively, there's other brands out there. For instance, there's Callebaut chocolate. In Callebaut chocolate, you can get in all different warehouses like Booker and all different, for buying food for cafes and restaurants. So the best thing is just to Google these places to find out where to buy it from. We get our chocolate from BFP and Fleming Howden, but you can buy it from Booker. I think you can get it from 3663, and you can get it from Macro and these type of places in Costco. From that, so for either Callebaut chocolate or the Belcolade chocolate. Alternatively, just recently I did a little test, and I went to the supermarkets. I wanted to see what the price difference was, and also the quality of the chocolate, because I was getting a lot of feedback from students saying different supermarkets had different quality of chocolate, and certainly the one that I found the best was actually Asda out of all the supermarkets, and it was it was the one above I think the Savour chocolate. It was roughly £1 for 200 grams, which is a great price, and I used the dark chocolate and the milk chocolate from their brand, and it worked almost exactly the same as the Belcolade chocolate. Now we buy the Belcolade round about £43 for 10 kilos. This is working about £55 roughly for the 10 kilo box. So just the small packets, but it melted very fast once you added it to the cream, and it's very smooth. There was no bumps, and the shelf life was great from it as well. So that was Asda. There is also Aldi that do chocolate as well. It's very cheap, but sometimes I find it's a little bit grainy sometimes, especially the dark chocolate one. So definitely out of all the supermarkets, I would recommend the Asda chocolate for that. But again, there's lots of good answers on there, so go and have a little look for that. And then what we were asked about on there, I noticed someone put a question about shelf life, which is quite interesting. Now obviously when you're baking cakes, especially if you start to get a lot of orders for cakes, it becomes quite difficult to juggle all the orders, especially if everything's sponge cake. Now obviously in the old days, I show my age a little bit, when I first started out it was mainly fruit cake for a lot of the wedding cakes, and it was great because you could start them weeks in advance. Where now it's all sponge and it's all pretty fresh, and that's mainly why we use oil cake rather than butter. So the oil helps to the length of the shelf life on there. But when we used to bake with butter to get the extra shelf life, we used to use glycerin. Now I don't know the technical part, but when we phoned up the supplier of the ingredients that we used, where we used to ask how can we get the extra shelf life, and certainly using the glycerin with there helps with the moisture and also the shelf life of the sponge on there. Now David's answered the question on there, so again you can go and have a look and just see what he says about the quantities, etc. for that. So definitely the glycerin does help, and you can't taste it, it just helps with the moisture and the shelf life of there. We use oil, and the reason why we use oil, it just helps, it just gives a cake, it's like a muffin cake, so it gives the moisture of for the cake, and it does double the length of the shelf life. Where a butter cake we would normally say about a week, with an oil sponge we normally say 2 weeks, so you can see the difference. Perfect when you've got lots of cakes to balance and juggle on there. So just to recap, the Q&A section is growing every week. It's really good source of information, and it's free, so you may as well use it, put your questions on, get answers back, answer as many questions as you can, and you get little prizes as well. So points mean prizes. How tacky does that sound? But it's there to help everyone, and if we can give you a little thank you for answering questions, that's great, and it just brings it into a nice community, and it just helps everyone. So hopefully you've enjoyed that blog. Please go on and have a look at the Q&A section. I'm sure you'll really enjoy it.